Larry O'Connor, AM 790 KABC, live here in the nation's capital, as always, with one eye in the Golden State and one eye in the corridors of power. And, well, what's happening in the corridors of power this week, and apparently for the next several weeks of our lives, will be an impeachment process that should concern, if not outrage, most Americans who care about our Constitution and due process. I know one American who cares about those things. He is the president of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, and he joins us now. It seems like every day we learn more and more that should make us quite concerned, Tom, about where this is going.
Oh, yeah. This is not an impeachment based on any evidence of wrongdoing. This is just a political power play to taint the president, constrain the administration of justice in terms of the targeting of those involved in the criminal spying on the president of the United States and then candidate Trump. And in doing this, they're abusing the president's civil rights, abusing the civil rights of others, and abusing their own offices. So, when you use the constitutional process in such an improper way, it ain't impeachment, it's a coup.
Let's talk a little bit about this outrageous action from Adam Schiff and his Intelligence Committee in subpoenaing phone records for American citizens. You've got the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, caught up in this. And then a whole bunch of guests that I've had on this program, John Solomon, the journalist, Victoria Tonsig, Joe DeGeneva, and, by the way, Representative Devin Nunes, his counterpart there, fellow congressman. Is there any precedent for this kind of behavior?
No, I'm not aware of any precedent. Investigative committees, oversight committees provide oversight of the government. They don't have the power under our Constitution or any fair reading of it to engage in investigations of American citizens like they did in this regard. They not only, in my view, violated the rights of President Trump in trying to drag up his lawyer's phone records, but then they start publishing the private phone calls of these citizens without regard to any of the privacy protections or other things or other rights they have under the Constitution. This is a wild abuse of power we're seeing here. And it shows you, Larry, that the coup's not just about destroying Donald Trump. It undermines all of our rights. Do you want some member of Congress to secretly subpoena your phone records? Well, in Schiff world, they can, and there's not anything you can do about it. And that can't be the case. We have to stand against it.
It is incredible, Tom Fitton, that we're not seeing more journalists step up about this issue because, listen, how many Pulitzers have been won in the last several years by the Washington Post and the New York Times solely based on illegal anonymous leaks from people within the intelligence community or the Justice Department? People within the government have illegally leaked information to journalists. And if the president, or for that matter, when the Republicans had control of the House, Representative Devin Nunes or Speaker of the House Ryan, if they wanted to get to the bottom of those illegal leaks, imagine if they had subpoenaed the phone records of journalists to find out who they were talking to. You think we would have heard some outrage about that?
Well, there's a difference between journalists and the left. And the left, which is controlling much of the major media today, doesn't care one whit about the Constitution, doesn't care one whit about civil liberties. And whenever they pretend to, we should recognize that it's a pretense. It's a matter of convenience. As soon as the First Amendment or your rights get in the way of what their political or power goal is, it will all be cast aside. They don't care one whit about the First Amendment, and this proves it.
Let's turn to what we saw yesterday with Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi saying that she wants her committees to move forward with articles of impeachment, that they're going to move forward with drafting them. Then I suppose they'll vote them out of committee and then bring it to the floor of the House. I believe many Americans, if they don't have a vested interest or if they don't hate Trump or they don't love Trump, there's a whole lot of people who are looking at this saying, oh, this is just politics as usual. It's the same old partisan fight. What's the big deal? Can you explain how dangerous this process is and how it really is an attack on our individual constitutional rights as Americans?
Well, typically you have the right to vote for president and decide who's going to be president. And the Constitution allows for impeachment, but only in the most severe of circumstances. And to abuse that power willy-nilly without any evidence, without any due process for the president to try to defend himself, but they're going to vote out articles of impeachment without providing the president any meaningful opportunity to participate in the process, defend himself, or call witnesses. I mean, this is an attack on our structure of government, our ability to govern ourselves. Well, who do you want to decide who's going to be president? You, the American voter, or a coup cabal that's controlling the House right now, who thinks they can impeach a president simply because they don't like him and they don't need any good reason to do it. We don't know what he's being impeached over yet. It's been years, and we still don't know what he's being impeached over yet.
Yeah, it was remarkable to hear Nancy Pelosi yesterday say that this is we're not rushing through this. This has been a 2.5-year process. Can you explain, Tom Fitton, if you can, how that? Because none of the reporters dared to ask her this follow-up question. How could this have been a 2.5-year process if the phone call with the president of Ukraine just took place 3 months ago?
Well, now they're after the fact saying that the Mueller investigation is part of impeachment, as if Mueller wasn't hired to figure out whether the president should be impeached or not. And he found no evidence of collusion with the Russians. He found that the president was concerned about misconduct at the Justice Department, which the Democrats translate into, well, he's obstructing justice because he's complaining about abuses of power by the Justice Department. This is a serious threat to anyone who cares about the rule of law. What the Democrats are saying is, if you investigate us or investigate our allies or complain about our abuses of you, we're going to remove you from office, contrary to the rule of law and the Constitution. Or in the case of Giuliani and John Solomon, we'll drag your name through the mud by releasing your private phone records gained through a secret subpoena process. This Star Chamber type of proceeding we need to oppose. And I tell you, your listeners, they should not pretend or act as if impeachment's a done deal. It is not a done deal in my view. And even if it is, practically speaking, you should still make your voices heard. Say you do not want impeachment. If you don't like it, you got to let your voice be heard. Don't presume things will go just the way they're going to go and it's inevitable he'll be impeached. It's not inevitable. The speed suggests they're nervous. It's a rotting fish, and they recognize the longer it's out there, the worse it gets. And this is why the speed is This is why it's being pursued so speedily. And they're also very nervous, Larry, about this FISA-Gate report next week. And I don't know if it's going to result in criminal prosecutions, but it's going to detail criminality against the president of the United States involving the political party that's trying to remove him for exposing that very same criminality, especially in respect to Ukraine.
Yeah, listen, and we'll have you back on after that report comes out. Obviously, Inspector General's reports. Actually, let's do a little preview of the Inspector General report because it does come out on Monday, and no doubt we'll get some sort of leak or drop this afternoon because it's Friday in D.C., and that's what happens. So people understand, by definition, Inspector General's reports are limited in scope and in power in terms of what they can investigate, who they're even allowed to talk to. Before I feel like there's this big sort of straw man being built up that if in some way the Inspector General's report doesn't call for James Comey and Andrew McCabe to be arrested, that in some way Republicans have failed in proving their point or conservatives have failed in proving their point. Explain to our listeners how limited Inspector General's reports are, and this is just the beginning of a process.
Well, that's right. IGs, if you quit the Justice Department, you don't have to talk to the IG if you don't want. They don't have the power to compel third parties in that respect to testify. They can only look at the agency they're looking at, so the IG can't ask the CIA about what's going on or the State Department about what went on. So it's kind of a more narrow view. But IG reports, and this one I suspect will follow the same pattern, are both exposés and cover-ups at the same time. There are going to be a lot of devastating facts. But because the IG is a creature of the deep state ultimately and a creature of the Justice Department, a lot of punches will be pulled. But the facts are going to be out there, and it's going to be up to Barr and Durham, and I think literally up to those two, because Barr is surrounded by thousands of James Comeys at the Justice Department to pursue any criminality that is highlighted or hinted at here. But on the other hand, I don't know, Larry. If the past is prologue, not much will happen. And if I were the president, I'd just appointed special counsel directly because I think the Justice Department is just seriously broken.
We're speaking with Tom Fitton. He's the president of Judicial Watch. And let's go back to the impeachment question. You just raised it and said this is not a done deal. I think Nancy Pelosi may very well have the votes to get a majority, which would be what she needs 218, right, to have to get this
Right.
out of the House. But if she only gets a bare majority, 218, 220, that means she's facing the fact that she couldn't even get all the Democrats to vote with her. That's 10 or 15 Democrats or 20 Democrats who are saying no. That would be a bit of a disaster. Even if she moves it out of the House, unless she gets all the Democrats on board, isn't that bad news for her?
Oh, yeah, and this is why it's not a done deal, in my view. If you say you've got 218 votes, that means you don't know how it's going to turn out in the end. Between now and 2 weeks from now, to say that you're going to be guaranteed to keep those votes is just ludicrous. And they're trying to make it seem as a fait accompli. That's why the process is denying the president any chance to object in any serious way or participate in any serious way, because it's such a close-run thing for them. And this is why the voters need to intervene. The longer this has been out, they never wanted to hold hearings to begin with. It's incredible. They held impeachment hearings and support for impeachment, dropped 10 points?
Yeah. So, given that, I support the president on most things. I think that he makes the right call on a lot of things. Sometimes I disagree with him. On this aspect, I do disagree with him because he's calling for a vote. He says, if you're going to impeach me, let's just get it done so I can get my Senate trial. It sounds like you disagree with that strategy as well. Listen, it may be working politically for the president, but for our nation as a whole, the use of impeachment in this way is incredibly damaging now and to the future, isn't it?
Yeah, I kind of, you can see both sides of it. If it's wired and rigged, let's stop the game and just do it. And my view is, even if it's wired and rigged, you got to fight for your life. And if you lose, you lose, but at least you fought. And I suspect that will happen in the end. That people around the president and independent voters, and maybe even some Democrats, will say this is just too much. Yeah. We're not going to ruin Christmas with a fraudulent impeachment. The Republic deserves better. We got an election in November. Let's just move to that.
In the meantime, Tom Fitton, we are counting on Judicial Watch to keep everybody in check and hold their feet to the fire. Is there?
Oh yeah, we got the lawsuits. We got the lawsuits on what they were doing in Ukraine and about Joe Biden and the whistleblower.
That's what I was going to ask. What are you able
to
do? What are you able to do with your FOIA requests and with your actions that you can do to decide to bring this information to the front? Clearly, Adam Schiff doesn't want Joe Biden called in. He doesn't want any investigation into Burisma. Anytime you mention it, it's like you're putting a cross up in front of a vampire. What are you able to do in that regard?
Well, we're going to get the documents eventually, and certainly sue for them and educate people through that process as well. The impeachment will be over before you know it. We'll be talking about this in a month in the past tense, both for any trial or the impeachment, however it turned out. But it's not going to be over in the sense they will continue to try to impeach him. They basically admitted that. And there needs to be accountability for the misconduct in the effort to try to destroy Trump through this coup. Who was working in the CIA to take him out? What about Vindman's contacts with his colleagues? Were all of that, was that appropriate? Who in Schiff's office was talking to whom and about what that involved classified information being illegally and illicitly conveyed? All of that's going to be investigated, certainly by us. I doubt the Senate or the House will do much of it.
Well, Tom Fitton, as this process goes on, like I said, we're counting on Judicial Watch and your great work there. And if you want to help them out, this is a good Christmas gift, by the way, is to keep Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch doing their job. It's judicialwatch.org. Well, hopefully, listen, if they do this vote between now and Christmas, we'll have you back on to talk about it, Tom. But you dare to make a prediction on this? How do you think this is going to go? Everybody says, it's inevitable. They have to do the vote. They have to vote for impeachment. I'm not so sure at this point.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very close, much closer than the establishment media would have you believe, because they want him to be impeached. And any impeachment trial is going to be really short, and it's going to be over.
All right. From your lips to God's ears, we shall see. Tom Fitton, thanks for joining us as always. Good to talk to you, my friend.
You're welcome. Thank you, Larry.
That is Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch. Again, it's judicialwatch.org. There are a lot of organizations in Washington, D.C. who claim to be doing the same work that Judicial Watch actually is doing. And for my mind, Judicial Watch is the only one that's actually getting it done. It's the Larry O'Connor Show on AM 790 KABC. AM 790 KABC. AM 790.